investigator. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's your favorite paranormal investigator. My name is Tim Sudano. Welcome to our live show. This is I can't talk. This is Paranormal Insight. Tonight's guest is the one, the only, the incomparable Michelle Desrochers. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Before we jump in with Michelle, I want to give a special shout out to our friends in Nolens. That's how you say it here in America, Nolens. They had a horrible tragedy on New Year's, and we want to offer, or at least I would like to offer, my hopes and prayers to the families who were affected. And also, Happy New Year! It's 2025. And this show marks my 3-year anniversary, and this is the first live show I'm doing with the UPRN. You know what? I'm done talking about me and the show, and I'm going to bring on our guest. Let's meet Ms. Michelle Desrochers. I muted you on accident. There she is.
Hello.
Yeah, here we are.
How are you? Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Oh, thank you. So, wow, happy anniversary. 3 years. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, 3 years. This marks our 3rd year. I've been broadcasting on UPRN for the past month and a half, but that's been old shows from season 2, chiefly, except for the Christmas special.
Yes.
But, or the post-Christmas special, or however it is you want to say that.
Yeah.
And so
that's awesome.
Anyway, and thank you to all the happy New Year's and all that fun stuff, and happy anniversaries. Thank you very much. We're getting that on the chat right
chiming in. A lot of people chiming in.
Yeah, it's awesome. Hello.
I know, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
These are great. These are awesome. Who am I missing?
Hello, and welcome to the chat, everyone. I'm so excited to interact with you on this in this way. And thank you so much for the beautiful souls comment. That's very, very, very kind. So let's jump right into who is Ms. Michelle Desrochers. And did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, not a lot of people get that right. I married it, so I kind of got caught with it because it came my professional name. And then when that resolved, it's like, all right, here we are. So, yeah, it's a tongue twister, but yeah, Desrochers, you got it. Ooh, indeed. So
excellent.
But yeah.
Excellent. And special thanks to Kat Ward for helping me make sure I got that right.
She knows. Yeah.
So let's quickly jump into let's start with your UFO experience. Now, you're an experiencer, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am an experiencer.
Okay.
And funny enough, I have been since I was a child. Only I didn't realize it then because I had a lot of paranormal experiences as well. I think a lot of them go hand in hand, but I just now, of course, being aware, I think back and started doing some research, and I see a lot of the typical stuff, like like my fascination with the stars, for example. I was always watching the stars. Grew up northern Canada. We'd see things all the time without aging myself before the age of satellite per se, or maybe it would be 1 or 2, but up there, when you saw something zipping across the night sky that was silent or really, really quick, where we were being in a valley, not a lot of airplanes or anything like that. So we saw a lot. My family had a lot of experiences, and speaking with my mother, in the last probably year before she passed, I said, like, I need to know, did anybody else in the family have experiences? She says, oh yeah, for sure. And told me incredible things. I'm just like, my grandfather even used to have a telescope and he'd watch the stars. Like, definitely things were going on. And I think into my teen years, I remember having a really lengthy view, just being out, coming home late at night, and I would just lay on the hood of the car. And this was like a, nice, beautiful evening, probably about, I don't know, 1 in the morning. And I watched a craft come across the valley, and then it just stopped because we had a lot of lakes in the area. And apparently, sometimes they'll come down and draw water. There's been a lot of photographs
Oh,
of stuff like that. So I knew roughly which lake that it was hovering over. And it took about 20 minutes. It went down really slow and just descended. And then, I thought, okay, it's interesting. And probably within, I don't know, I'm going to take a shot at it because, I'm old. I don't remember things that great anymore. But I would say probably, probably about 15 minutes, give or take. And that could bounce around depending on which day you ask me, but it wasn't too long. And it just shot straight up and then just took off and like a bullet. And I was like, okay, that
wow.
was something. And the next morning we had
Yeah.
military helicopters just swarming the valley. There were two of them. I was like, okay, that's the validation. So, right. So,
For sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
When the military shows up after your sighting,
Mhm.
that's pretty much a
You
guarantee.
you got something when they show up, but, so, then things went quiet,
For sure.
um, to my knowledge with, the experiencer stuff up until maybe a handful of years ago, and then little snippets started coming back, and I realized that they've been present in my life the whole time, and now, I can think back to the different places I've lived, and definitely things were happening and watching my children, especially as adults. I was terrified of Grace. I'm like, his kid would be up on the second floor is where the bedrooms were, and we were located in a couple of acres. So he'd go around like from the time he was 5, and he would just be making sure all the doors and windows, like the windows upstairs, were locked. And I'm like, you'll be okay, I
Wow.
promise. It'll. And he's just like, I would just feel better. And he would ask me every night, did you check the windows? And I'm like, yes, no problem. And then I came to find out that he had a very vivid memory of something trying to pull him out of a closed window. And he goes, I was going through that window and it wasn't open. And this probably happened to him when he was maybe 18. I know.
Wow.
I know. So,
That's wow. That's good. Now,
yeah.
when it comes to the recall, did you or was that your grandfather you were talking about?
Um, well, my earlier, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm talking about my
Sorry.
son
Oh,
just now, but
so
my grandfather.
oh, your son. I'm sorry. I did miss that. There was a little
Yeah,
everything
sorry.
blinked
Yeah.
out here for a second here.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm
So,
quick. So, yeah. Yeah.
too quick, too quick. Did you guys both go through any regressive therapy in order to recall these memories, or did it just come to you over time?
No, I think a lot of it now in hindsight, I look back, because I have semi-aware experiences now. I mean, while they're happening, if I'm up there, I've had experiences of, looking out of like a portal window sort of thing and seeing the stars. And I've
Mm,
had other experiences where I'm coming up underneath something while I'm, it just feels like I'm floating and up, things like that. I'm more aware now, but I couldn't really tell you 100% what goes on while I'm there. But we we just seem to have recollections. Like I know now at one of my homes that at around between 2 and 3 in the morning, the house would just start to shake, and I would hear something coming right over the house, and the house just sort of shook a little bit. And just having those
mm.
kind of experiences and black vans just shooting up in the middle of the night, up the street and things like that, like all blacked out.
Really?
And this
So
happened a
you were
couple of
being
times, and cryptid beings and stuff. Yeah, it's just stuff. And now I remember going and everything's coming back. And I
huh,
think once you become
huh. So
aware,
you were being surveilled as well as being abducted.
well, or I don't know if I
Appar
personally
That's a
was,
guess.
but I imagine a craft comes in, it's going to attract a lot of attention. And not too far from where I was, ironically, there was a spot that could overlook Lake Ontario, and they called it UFO Lookout. So I imagine there was just a lot more, I know, in the area. Well, Lake Ontario is known for its sightings, right? So people would go in with telescopes and
Yeah.
all kinds of things, and they would all line up along the escarpment, and they could see the lake from there, and they could see all kinds of stuff. So I never really got involved in it. It was not my thing per se, because like many people, you don't often see the connections. You think everything you're going through is um, paranormal at the time. That's a good comment with Howie. Yeah, we'll put it up.
I'll put that up there.
If the craft is transdimensional, does it mean it's based on frequency and you would have to be on that frequency to see it? My thoughts, yes, 100%. It's all about vibration
Mm,
and frequency. I have no doubt, knowing the things that I know now and basing on some of the experiences that I've had, I definitely think people who are very tuned in on certain frequencies will see certain things more than others who are not. So, good one, Howie.
that's intriguing. There's something to be said for that, and you're not the only person I've heard say that, because you've probably interviewed certain people yourself where you, as have I, where they say, I saw it, but my brother or sister standing next to me didn't. And we were
Mhm,
both looking at the exact same point.
mhm.
So,
Yes.
and that happens on the more spiritual level too. I'm talking ghosts and stuff like that. Some
Mhm.
people just have the vision for it, the frequency,
Yes.
if you prefer, and others
Yes.
don't.
Yes. Oh, 100%. There have been crowds of people who have seen things and other people are completely
Right.
oblivious. Like, for example, I had a friend of mine texted me one day, and she was from around the bay from where I was, and she said, and she always calls me, she's my daughter's friend, she always call me mama. She goes, "Heads up, mama, something coming your way at about 2 o'clock." I'm going, "Okay."
Yeah.
And she says, "There's something sticking
Really?
out of the cloud." The back end, she could see a curvature sticking out of a cloud. So we went in and took a drive, and it took about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, gave me time to get down closer to the lake, which was Lake Ontario, but the other side of it. And
Mm,
sure enough, this big behemoth of a cloud, and it looked like it was purging out like the light. Some people think, oh, it's just lightning. I think I'm logical, and I think that too. Maybe clouds have lightning and they're just boom, boom, pretty well timed. And
right.
the back part of it was this big dark circle, like just sticking out of it. And I just remember saying, telepathically going, I can see you. And it just floated up. Then it went
Uh,
up the Niagara River and just went all the way up. So it was just kind of like, that's very
wow.
interesting. One of many experiences. Yeah,
That's very,
absolutely. Yeah.
that's amazing.
So,
That's an amazing.
yeah.
Ken asked an interesting thing, and I want to share that.
Oh, okay. For our audio listeners, does Michelle have any advice on how to change the frequency or to be able to see things? Well, sure. I think if you're open-minded, meditate, just be aware. I truly believe if we want to see them, we can see them. Raising your vibration is just putting out positive stuff, and that's what you pretty much attract. I'll always tell people, dance, open some windows, do some grounding, some earthing, laugh, just watch a funny movie, listen to some music. Whatever is uplifting is what raises your vibration. Meditate, connect. And because a lot of this is telepathic as well, and a lot of times people are getting messages and have no idea where it's coming from. For me, I'd be just thinking, "Oh, some dead guy talking to me again." Meanwhile, it's like an ET, and it's not a dead guy. So, it just takes some
Yeah.
conditioning, to do that. And since, because this whole CE5 thing came out, which is, calling them to you. And for
Yeah.
me, I'm thinking, it seemed like, people are paying a lot of money to go and do it. And I'm thinking, maybe because I'm already a contactee, but when I made the decision to want to engage again, I guess, I just telepathically put it out there. And within at least a week, things started happening, because they were happening slowly before that. I just wasn't ready for it, I think, because I would wake up sometimes and I had hands on my head, and I could feel this
Oh,
energy. And I'm thinking, okay, obviously, where we're doing an energy exchange here, or, I would get downloads and things like that that went on to be validated with things. And I remember one time it caught me off guard. And I remember saying something like, touch me and I'll break your arm. That wasn't cool, but I said it. But the hands, to show you the respect, the hands came right off, like, immediately. I just maybe didn't expect, or they didn't think I would just wake up during that process. So, there's just been a lot of experiences that I've had. I mean, I could go on for an hour just talking about things that have happened to me in the last 5 years, not counting anything else. I
yeah,
know.
right on. Um,
So,
sorry, move my mic out of the way since I'm not using it. Well, we have 45 minutes till the first break, so.
right. Well, all right, here we
But
go. Yeah,
there we go.
well, with
Um,
okay, well,
sorry,
I
she
came
timed out
back.
there for a second.
Oh, we're just gonna do it then? Okay.
Oh, there you go.
We
You're
did
back.
I we finished filming, in out in the Niagara on the Lake area at the time. This is going back a few years. This is before I made the decision to, okay, because I think they were just easing me into it, and all of a sudden, this huge white flash of something, and it wasn't really light because it was very translucent. Like, I thought maybe it was a bag that was flopping about that the headlights hit, and you know, but it was the size of a deer. I'm like, that's a big bag. Nobody wants to be that guy either, right? Nobody wants to say, "Did you see that?" So I'm just shutting right up. And then
No.
Wayne looks at me and goes, "Did you see that?" I'm like, "Thank God you said it first." Yes, yes, I freaking saw whatever the hell that was. But it was so big, and it went over the height of a stop sign. So when you look down to our left where we were going, like, we looked, there was a Niagara River. There's like a 400-foot drop. A deer would have no room to run, pick up speed, and jump that high. And when it landed beside it, we stopped the truck and looked, and there was nothing after that. It was completely gone. So we just kind of looked at each other and went, I don't know. I don't
Oh,
know. For once,
that's
I got
very interesting.
nothing. Yeah, it was weird. And then after that, I was home one night. I was upstairs, and this is a big old Gothic revival manor. So it had a big tower,
Oh, nice.
and when you looked across, you were looking at pretty much the roof of a church, because that part of the church came after that house was built. It used to overlook the river. So cars were not, they just weren't, they couldn't shine their headlights that high up. Because believe me, I freaking experimented with everything. Because this one night I was just sitting, just kind of hunkering down, I was just going to read a book. I'm just going to hunker down for the night and call it a night. And this big flash of light, because we were high enough up that I could keep the shears, like, the curtains open just with the shears on a really nice evening. And this light came blasting through the room, hit a mirror in the ensuite adjacent wall, bounced back out. I think my book, I'm like, the hell was that? So, I'm kind of like, all right. Like, I read that the Niagara region, which is where we were at the time, was extremely active, but you don't realize how active it really is, until you really you're awake. You see things. Like, I mean, really awake, not as in physically, but I mean, in here. And things just
Yeah.
started happening after that. So I would say, a few weeks, maybe a couple months after that. Again, same scenario. So I'm just hunkering down. I'm fully awake, and I look, because you get that feeling where you're just being looked at. And I look, and there's a gray, like, right there. And this isn't late at night. This might be like, I don't know, maybe 11, 12, midnight. It's not, you know, but it was a
In the
quiet
room with
area.
you?
Oh yeah, right beside me. And still not ready. Still not ready.
Okay.
Just saying, was not ready for something like that. So I just remember
Right.
like thinking out loud, and I went, nope. Like I verbalized, I went, nope. And I just rolled over. It's like, I'm not even doing this. And I mean, I turned my back to it. Besides that, I'm thinking, God, in hindsight, I'm like, I don't know if that was a good idea, but it was very respectful, and it was gone because, you know, you always have to look back because it's just it's instinct, right? It's like, "Oh, I have to
Yeah.
see if it's still there," and it was gone.
Right.
So, I'm just like, you know, then Wayne comes in, goes, "You okay?" I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. So, I know. So, you know, after
Wow.
that, it was just a lot of downloads and being given visions and being given messages and being shown research. Because I research a lot and just being pulled in different directions. That's when I made the decision. I said, okay, I'm ready now. So I thought. And I just telepathically connected and called them. And then the experiences started like pretty immediate. So
Wow. That's amazing. I just
yeah.
wanted to briefly point out to everyone that we have a
Yes.
delay between us. So my
Yes.
responses to her stuff is going to be delayed and vice versa. Just letting you all know.
Yeah. I'll try to slow down for you. Uh,
it's, it's not even that. It's but
yeah,
okay, so no regression for you, no regression therapy per se.
no.
This just started happening to you because you were tuned in or wanted to be tuned in. Even subconsciously, you were kind of going, "Oh, yeah, I can go for this." And but
Yeah.
you also set up boundaries, which I found very interesting.
Mhm.
Now, when you're having these experiences, you're in a semi-conscious state usually,
No, I'm pretty
except for the
conscious.
gray showing up in your bedroom.
I no, I'm pretty conscious.
Oh, are you?
I hadn't even gone to sleep yet. No. No. No, I was fully conscious for those. Uh,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, are you often taken up into the craft or
Those are the parts that, you know, I assume it's happening. It doesn't happen when I'm awake because I kind of have a boundary that I put out there. Like sometimes I'll go to bed and I can sense the presence. And I'm just like, okay, I am freaking exhausted. I have a headache. Let me go to sleep. Then I don't care. I'll go to work. I'll do whatever. And then I have these, you know, you get these wild, this is where I would get these sort of images of, you know, looking outside and
Mm,
seeing the stars, for example. But in my mind, I must be dreaming. I'm on like a regular ship because I see this. I'm looking out a ship portal, not realizing, oh, it's a portal, all right. But you're not looking out into space.
mhm,
You're not looking out onto the sea, for example, like things like that. I was shown, you know, a vision where I'm for some crazy reason. It seems to be winter, and I have my car out. I have a sports car. I'm like, I wouldn't have my car in this nonsense, but I'm on a ramp and it looked like it was ice and that the car, which is very low to the ground, right, is on this
mhm.
angle and I'm in heels and I'm stepping out of the car going, I'm going to kill myself on this ramp because the car's not right, everything's not right. But then the idea was, and everything was in pastels, which is weird because like I'm very dark in my attire. It's like I don't do pastels very well,
Yeah.
but the whole thing was in pastel. And I look back and I saw this huge arch, which looked like rainbow coming out of it, all pastels. And it just looked like some kind of a doorway. And I remember looking back and I
Hmm.
remember acknowledging it and getting back into the car, and everything was gone. Now, here's the kicker that a year later, maybe a year and a half later, driving in that direction, and it was probably about 6 o'clock at night. So it's summertime. It's beautiful out, no storms, nothing. And I look up, and there's this big that portal in the sky right over the highway, which was like a 6-lane highway. And I'm like, Wayne. It's like, yeah, do you freaking see that thing? And he's like, I don't see it. I'm like, you have to see it. This thing is massive. Like it just went over this big, and then all of a sudden it was just gone. And I'm just like, some people think that it's light gate maybe. So I just don't know enough about all of that stuff. I just know it was shown to me. So to see it while you're driving in real time was just crazy. I know Howie. Good thing,
Howie, Howie Odell. I just saw this.
Yeah, his other question, self-projection. Well, let me tell you something. I could psychokinesis like the best of them, but no, I don't think so. I think, had you asked me this as a young teen, or because I know I poltergeist the heck out of my parents' house just with self-projected energy. Like I'm not going through menopause, that's long gone. So I know I'm not projecting anything that way, you know but but I know, there I go, aging myself again. But so there's one thing that I know a lot because of spending a couple of decades in the field of paranormal, working with people who, self-projected. I could tell you when these things are happening, I'm doing other things, or I'm fully awake, hunkering down. So I don't believe that they were self-projection per se. I really don't think so, you know. So I think I
Gotcha.
would know at this
I hear
point. I
you.
mean, my daughter used to project like crazy. So something's going on in the house. I'm like, stop it! It's you. So I like to think I would recognize it, but who knows? I won't rule
Right.
anything out.
That kind of brings up an interesting experience I had maybe a couple 3 weeks ago, and I'm not one to. I don't believe I am an experiencer at all, but I
Hmm.
had a similar thing to what you did with the being entity, whatever, was put hands on your head.
Mm,
I'm suddenly in my head. My head has just hit the pillow pretty much.
hmm.
And suddenly I see three, they almost look like the reptilian grays, if you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Um, and there's three of them are standing over me. I said, no, not tonight. I'm just too, no. And they all stood up, and suddenly I woke up
Yeah.
again.
Right. Right.
That's like,
Yeah. I mean,
it's so,
yeah, I've had, reptilian experiences. I've had mediums come up to me. I filmed with this really amazing medium a few years back, probably about, I don't know, I'll say 8 years ago. And he looked at me and he goes, "You have someone with you." I'm like, "Oh, okay, great. Who?" And he kept trying to say draconian. He kept saying drac, drac, drake, drac. I'm like, I go, what does it look like? He goes, like a lizard. I'm going, draconian? He goes, that's the one. Because he's like really protective,
wow.
and he's like just standing. He's trying to stand between you and I. Well, unbeknownst to me, this medium, when he would connect with you, male or female, if he put his hand on your chest, which is usually the heart chakra, he could connect with you. And I guess that wasn't going to be a thing. Putting your hand on my chest was not an option. So it's the only thing I can attribute it to.
Yeah.
But it was strange because through the years I've had people make mention of that. So I don't know. I think that
That's
we're
interesting. There's something there's, I don't know, movement is not the word I like to use, but I guess I don't know. We'll go with movement for now, though. But I guess a group believing a certain thing type of deal. Where, and this is going to those who know of her, Elena Danan. She's that
yes.
French
Mm.
archaeologist
Yep.
artist who had that abduction experience.
Mhm.
That was, and
The
her
channels.
abduction experience left her with a chip in her head, and
Mm.
the good guy aliens, we'll call them for now,
Right.
the good guy aliens rescued her, altered the chip, and made it a communication device. This
Mhm.
is her claim.
Yes.
Um, the and she eventually drew this gigantic map. She's a very good artist, by the way. But
Mhm.
she drew this gigantic map of the various alien races that are out there. The three
Mhm.
different alliances. Some are for us, some are against us, some are neutral.
Mhm.
And when it comes to the Draconians, they're chiefly against us. What do
Mm.
you stand on that versus your experience with the medium?
Okay, well, just talking with different experiencers, some people have had amazing reptilian and draconian experiences. So I think, like anything else, is how it was put to me: is you have good ones and you have bad ones. Much like good people,
Right.
bad people. I think there was a concern at one time that they were just outnumbered by, you know, bad ones. But you have to remember, it's believed that the Draconians were a warring race, and a lot of them have been here long before us. Like, we are definitely not the first kick of the can at this planet, and we're definitely not going to be potentially the last either. So, I mean, you look at it that way, maybe, if they were here first, for example, then we're the ones who are fair game kind of deal, right? So I don't know. But if you
Mhm.
go back to the Canadian Defense Minister, who's deceased now, Paul Hillier, he had
Yeah.
always said that there were probably about 130 to 160 different extraterrestrial races that they were aware of. So that's a lot. That's a lot. But I mean, I think sometimes too, you're
That's
looking
a
at something
lot.
that could be pretty scary, like, the mantis. I'm thinking, "Oh, hell to the frickin' no." And, but meanwhile, I hear people who have had incredible experiences with them. I'm thinking, I'm not even keen on the little ones. And, they get in their sight, they put their little hands up at you. I'm just like, "No, heck, I'm all right." But but
It's okay.
apparently right? But apparently people have had incredible experiences with them, and I ended up getting a recording, one time, and there was a lot of clicking sounds, and I'm like, "Well, grays, I think, do clicking or clocking," and I was corrected by a guest who was on the show, and he goes, "No, those are mantis." I'm like, "That's a bit close for comfort." So I researched that a little bit and realized
Okay.
that so many people had really great experiences with them. So don't judge a book by its cover, I
That's
guess
interesting.
is
True,
yeah,
true. I posed the question only because there is that opposition to the Draconians. And
sure.
furthermore, I spoke with Doctors Stone and Alcorn, who
Mhm,
follow Elena to a degree and kind of follow her roadmap, for lack of a better
mhm,
term. And they do depossession, but they take it a step further. They also include, and these two are a married couple, and they're both psychologists.
mhm.
And I mean, come on, you
Yeah,
don't get to when it comes to dealing with these types of things in the
mm,
paranormal world at large. When a
mhm.
psychologist comes along and says, "Yep, you got something there," you
Yeah,
kind of have to, okay.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
was interesting. They relayed a few experiences through their clients who were a little more in contact with our friends in the stars, that
yes.
there are both sides to that story. There are some nice
Mm,
draconians and some not so
mhm.
nice draconians. There's some nice mantis people and some not so nice
Yes.
mantis people.
Like anything. Like anyone,
So
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
like anything. So I think
yeah,
by and large, it is every bit, you know, what's
mhm.
happening up in the stars is kind of relates to our human experience because we're living organisms, man. We're going to have relatively the same experiences.
Well, we are, and you have to ask yourself, they're not just so much from the stars. A lot of them are use portals or just light gates. It just flash in and out. And there's times where, they're in the oceans, they're in the mountains, they're underground. They're, the Hopi spoke of very,
Oh
very
yeah.
profoundly about the ant people, their big-eyed friends, and who were underground and took their people underground. There's also a story about that of a reptilian or draconian out in Brazil or Peru who did the same thing for the people there, took them underground during a cataclysm and took care of them and educated them. And so
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something to be said for it. The ancient people, you can see it in the monuments with the different statues that they have. I mean, there's a statue that was erected to this reptilian being in the city, this town where this all happened. But just, the petroglyphs,
Mm.
hieroglyphs, I mean, it's everywhere. We just are the ones who, it's been, it's been suppressed, and we've not been allowed to to know the information, or we're finally just waking up to it. We look at even things like the Book of Enoch. It's funny. I mean, some people who've read it will tell you, well, he was definitely in a hybridization program. So, there's just things of that nature. So it's how we're conditioned. My 2 cents worth.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. No, that's
Yeah.
fine. The one of the larger, well, the one thing that the two doctors I spoke of relayed to me, one of their clients had some sort of attachment that wasn't great, but at the same time, he had multiple attachments to him apparently,
Mhm.
and one was specifically ultra-dimensional, so different
Mhm.
dimension, but peeking through or was here or something like that. And they said very specifically that they described draconian type people. I mean, supposedly the evil ones with the wings
Mm.
are the bad guys.
Draconians, yeah.
That's according to the two doctors and Levin and Danan. That they were seen in hell, or what is perceived as hell, or something along those lines.
Mm.
And I've even touched on. I'm an author, in case you didn't know. You'll hear something about it in the commercial break.
Mm.
But I actually touched on that, the whole heaven hell thing, the various
Mhm.
types that we people, our
Mhm.
ancestors up to now have described these various spheres of either the Elysium fields or Tartarus, or as an example,
Mhm.
are these various different worlds, realms, what have you.
Mm.
So I actually touched on that, and that thing, that's what happens. We go to another dimension, another
Yeah.
place,
It's
and
not what we think it is by any means. So I'll
yeah,
pose this question then. So because of religious, upbringing and conditioning, um, do you think that what we're seeing are really angels and demons, or are we seeing light beings and reptilians and draconians?
that was my next question for you, actually.
I know where you're going. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yes,
Quit
so
leaving the. You're the interviewee, darn it.
I know. I'm sorry. I can't help it. No.
I tease, I
But
tease.
no, but
Yeah.
it really is something that I think it goes back to conditioning, because there are a lot of similarities between, the paranormal and being, like, some people will tell you, like, an ET abduction, and they'll call it like the whole the crossover phenomenon. Where you have like this parallel world. And this was something that John Keel believed, that certain creatures or beings were coming from a parallel world that would
Mhm.
include, I think, ET, maybe some of the cryptids that we see, because John Keel is known for his Mothman, right? So,
Right.
and he talked a lot about, um, extraterrestrials and all kinds of stuff, UFOs. They're definitely there. But I'll tell you something, like, there are people who have reported, they report seeing crazy things, even dragons. People see dragons, you know. I've always had a connection to dragons. Maybe it has something to do with the draconian people keep seeing with me. I don't know. But I've always loved dragons. Like, there's just, I've looked at them as being very wise, and they were always known for their wisdom, and it's not all what you see. I mean, some cultures revere them, But I think we just have to look at the fact that the similarities, even where the paranormal crosses over, people who have been experiencer or contactees, abductees, have reported things like the smell of sulfur. That's also
Mhm.
like a demonic thing. Bright white
Right.
lights, that is also seen in paranormal and orbs. Crackling sounds seen in both. Dealing with dimensional or
Mhm.
multiverse entities, parallel realities, the sleep paralysis. We could do a show just on sleep paralysis. I've done it, like
Oh, I know.
enhanced
Yeah,
psychic,
the sleep paralysis is huge.
r- right? Like, and
Mhm.
also
Right.
getting into things like increased psychic abilities after having these experiences. I've worked with people because I work primarily in malevolent um, hauntings. Um, they just, I don't know, it just didn't affect me for the most part the same way. I don't know. I just look at things very differently with energy, I suppose. But with that being said, these are a lot of the things that I've heard repeatedly, being told that, oh, look, I can make you psychic, and they're under some kind of a demonic attack. It's just like, no, no, I think it goes much deeper than that. And contactees have come back saying, no, like they just come back knowing all kinds of stuff. So you see how the parallels, so many things just crisscross over and over. It's hard to know. I question some of my own experiences. I know what I saw. I know that, yes, there is a strong belief that demons do exist and they are a different race than, let's say, the draconians, and that angels are a different
Right.
race, let's say, than light beings. So we don't
Yeah.
really know for sure, but I can tell you, I have experienced, you know, angels, demons, light beings, as well
Mhm.
as reptilians, grays, tall whites. Apparently, there's a mantis in there somewhere, but I don't know that whole thing because I don't connect with that. I just heard that. So,
Right.
there's a lot in there, right?
Yeah, there's a whole lot in there. I actually discussed this in this my second season prior to coming to the UPRN, where I posited my paranormal M theory, and apparently I'm the first one that coined that. I looked it up before I said it. So, and it does join all these different things. My chief
Yeah.
focus at the time was that in our ancient past, collectively,
Mhm.
humanity saw, for an example, in Greece, satyrs, half man, half goat.
Yeah.
Prior to that, in old Jerusalem, when the King Solomon was ruling, he ruled over creatures of
Mhm.
very similar description.
Like
Going
centaurs.
forward in time again,
Yeah.
like right, and going forward, well, actually, kind of paralleling the Greeks a little bit. Um,
So, yeah,
Actually, I
Minotaur.
take that back. Further beyond the Greeks, in the Norse legend, I talked about this at the Christmas time special. Krampus is
Mhm.
described as a satyr, and this
Ah.
creature is all over Western Mediterranean uh, lore, and even
Mhm.
a little bit in Eastern lore. Yeah, they were called. He was called. He wasn't called a sheep. He was called a ram man or something like that. I'm
Yeah,
forgetting the name.
crazy.
But
Yeah.
this M theory, and that's just the one layer of the theory. It does
Mhm.
relate to that. All these things could conceivably be tied together. You were
Well, look at
speaking. Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
I mean, ancient culture, Anubis, Horus,
Oh, sure, of course.
Ra, right? I
Ra.
mean, there's, Thoth, like the, human body, animal heads. This seems to be,
Right.
um, I mean, it's something. It's something. But I do think that we have stargates and portals all over this planet. I think the ancients built their temples and over top of these places because they knew. And then you have, of course, the bigger religious institution, I'll leave it there, that has come in and, whenever they would amalgamate an area or come into an area, they would take over some of these old sites, and because they knew that they were there. In fact, little fun fact I just recently found was under the Vatican. There's supposed to be some one of the largest bases like on the planet, and portals everywhere. And this, don't even get me started about the Pope doing the whole occult ceremony of opening up 5 portals. That man looks seriously freaking concerned at portal 5. Let me tell you. So he did not. He looked really, really concerned.
That's
So
rare too, because there's only supposed to be 4.
right, and then there's 5. Yeah, some jubilee thing. So people
And
are
now
kind of
this year he
losing
did
it
5. Yeah.
because they're hearing things on the recordings, right? So
Mm.
I know. So they're yeah, he did look very concerned, Howie. So, there's definitely things going on, and they know where a lot of these portals are. Like let's get into Antarctica. Why don't they want anybody
Oh
there?
wow. Well, you have that
Right?
much.
That's a rabbit hole and a half.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole nother show.
It's a whole other show, Tim. It's a whole other show. Yeah. So
It really is. I
I
mean,
know. I know. But
um, yeah, 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 yeah.
your turn. Yeah.
Let's briefly go to some of the questions that popped up in chat. Just we can do. Let's see. Okay, how we mentioned dragons here. And by the
An
way, Howie,
ostrich.
nice to meet you.
Exactly. The bones of a T-Rex alongside an ostrich. Exactly. Exactly. Things are not all as they seem.
Neck's a
You
little
know,
bit different, but
these
that's about it.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, they stem from there. Like the raptors, same. They believe that they were big
Oh,
ostriches.
sure.
The
Yeah,
ostrich stem from the raptors.
chickens today
Yeah.
often, yeah,
They can be as
chickens. They're not even close to
aggressive as
kids
a
yet.
raptor.
Yeah,
Chickens.
yeah. Well, look at their feet structure too.
It's true.
I
It's
mean,
true. Raptor roosters. Yeah,
yeah.
that works out for you. So, you know.
Talking about that as a Great Wall. How we mentioned the Great Wall of China. What were they trying to keep out? Mongols, chiefly, but
I
at
know.
least that's the excuse.
Yeah. You
I'll
could do
show
that.
the question. Uh,
Yeah. So,
um,
for the
look
audio
at the Great
listeners.
Wall of China. He says, what were they trying to keep in or out? That was that big and vicious.
Yes, I would definitely think that they
Yeah,
were trying to keep something out. Absolutely. You know, but this is
right.
all
That's a good
stuff that,
question. It definitely,
yeah, you just don't know. You just don't know.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
So, the portals, yeah, the
Howie,
portals
thanks
are,
for sharing your stuff, man. Yeah,
yeah.
he's leaving. That's why he said
Bye, bye, Howie. Yeah,
that.
the
But he there's how he made one interesting comment I'm going to share before he pieced out, as the kids say.
mhm,
It's a pleasure to be. He mentions that the T-Rex could have been interpreted as a dragon. Now that
sure.
brings to, and we got 10 minutes before the break. That brings a question to mind. We are seeing, and I've seen them in Florida chiefly, but I've also seen different iterations throughout at least the U.S. That are being reported in the last 10 years.
Mhm,
Dinosaur-like creatures. They're not that gigantic like
mhm,
their predecessors. They're smaller, but I mean, some that
mhm,
looked exactly like a T-Rex shot through someone's yard in 2 different locations in Florida, like in the
mhm,
last 2 or 3 years.
mhm.
Do you think we are still dealing with these creatures? I mean, we have the crocodile, we have the alligator. Those are prehistoric creatures. The shark.
Mhm. Well, I know
Um,
someone who was
thought,
able to remote view one someplace where there
really?
should not have been. Can leave that there without incriminating or attracting attention. But, yeah, I mean, we all know besides that, let's think logically for a moment. We all know that, different governments in the world, especially, in the US, cloning is definitely something that they have experimented with. And I think
Yeah.
with things thawing out, that they're being able, I mean, I think they're talking about cloning a mastodon. So they are, because the DNA was intact.
Oh yeah.
So how do you know they don't have that whole Jurassic Park going on, and that they have not pulled DNA somewhere? All it would take for you is to, you're trying to clone a couple, and do they let them out or do they escape? Judging by where they are, I don't think they would escape. So it makes you wonder. Or can
That
we
makes
talk
sense.
again? Dimensional shifts. How do we know something is just dimensional? It just doesn't open up, and they're
I was
coming
going to
in and
mention
out.
that as well. I mean, we could be dealing with these portals. I mean, like you said, there's all
Mhm.
these ancient portals all over the world.
They are,
I
and
mean,
that's Loch
it's,
Ness. Let's
whether
talk
they're
Loch
active or not
Ness.
is a different story. But
Well, for sure.
oh,
Why
come
don't
on,
they ever?
really?
They never
Come on,
find. They
absolutely.
never find this thing, and they swear that the loch is not big enough to sustain life for something that big. Okay, then maybe it's coming in and out of something. My thoughts.
There's and there's enough geological material. There's enough geological material in the area that it could
Mhm.
support something energetic that is a
Coming in and
waypoint or a
out.
through point, like a wormhole or whatever. Yep,
Yes.
absolutely,
I
absolutely.
agree. I think we
Never
have to
mind,
look outside the
starting with a
box.
huge quartz deposit there.
Yes. Look
Yeah.
outside the box. I agree.
Yes,
No.
absolutely. Um, Heidi, which one are you looking at?
Probably the same one you are. Go ahead.
No, I had a question about any experiences. So Heidi, go ahead and type your question about which experience. Oh, you're talking about the audience. I just saw the arrows. Okay.
Oh, with
Never mind.
with what? Okay, so, with what, Heidi? The
I'm not
portals?
sure.
People are really curious
Yeah, you're
about the
talking about
portals.
portals or
Apparently, it's a jubilee thing.
yeah,
Like, I've dug up a lot
yeah,
of
every
information
25
on it,
years.
none of which I have in front of me because I didn't expect it to really, get into it a whole lot. Might be good for an open mic night, though, I'll tell you that'll happen. But right? But this
Yeah,
was
I'm down for that.
definitely something that happens every 25, 30 years, and here's the
Yeah.
kicker, okay? The 5 locations, if you draw a line between them, allegedly, they draw the symbol of Lucifer. It's an occult practice. It's an
Are
occult
you
thing.
talking about the pentagram?
Nope. No, it's definitely I'll have let me see if I can
Okay.
find it for you. Okay.
Dig
Uh,
that up. Dig that up.
uh
That'd be interesting.
yeah.
Military
For
or Galactic Federation type beings. Oh, you want to hear
portals.
my story? Okay, Heidi, I got a
I do.
story for
You
you
do
that'll
that
cover
while
the
I'm
entire
looking
thing.
for this. Yeah, you
Okay,
do
you
that
got it.
while
Okay, so Heidi, so here's your
yeah.
story. I am former Air Force. I was a cadet in the ROTC system. I did not graduate, but I had a great deal of experience, if you take my meaning. I'll put it this way. Officially, I was a cadet. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
But and I also worked at NASA, and prior to that. So here's
I'm
my
listening.
story, and it wasn't even related to either of those necessarily, but let me briefly touch on NASA. When I was at NASA, I learned that we had tractor beams. Full on, my 25 years are up, by the way. We had
Mhm.
tractor beams. We had prototype light drive, fashion light drives, if not functional fashion light drives. They weren't manned though, as I recall. They were still like drones, but in space. But anyway, um, tractor beams, fashion light drives, and what was that third one? No big surprise. Particle cannon, because the whole. I don't want to get into conspiracies, but we've
Yeah,
seen some use of
gotta
particle
watch with
cannons.
those.
Nuke torch were involved.
Yes. Mhm.
That's all I'll say
Uh,
about that. But
okay. I'm gonna
there
put
were
this in here.
there was this one experience after my Air Force experience. So we're talking 2002, give or take.
Right.
And I was working as a DJ.
Ooh.
And I've told this story before my show. I was working as a DJ, and we were at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. If you don't know where that is, look it up, Google it, whatever, either now or after the show.
Yes.
And if you get some photos of that place, you're going to see there's a lot of, we'll call them interesting characters there.
Right.
To say the least. Along with all the tourists who go there and stuff. So me and my partner on the gig were loading equipment in to a cargo elevator at the outside of this building.
Right.
And I see this young girl. She looked to be about 10 or 12, and she was extra skinny, kind of lanky, long. And she had this platinum hair, bob cut, and extra long fingers. Like if you take my hand and you double the finger length, those are her fingers. And she was playing with kids literally that appeared to be about half her age. And it looks like they were trying to play tag with her, and she didn't get it. Humanoid looking, she had gigantic red rimmed sunglasses on.
Right.
She was the only one wearing sunglasses. And she's playing tag with a group of kids, and they're kind of running circles around her. She didn't get it because they kept tagging her back. So okay. So she kept passing. It was kind of funny. And then all these kids get called away because it was time for them to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of watching this as I'm loading this thing in. I have the presence of mind to give my buddy a nudge and say, "You see that girl? She's got those extra long fingers, right?"
Right.
Yeah, that's weird. And right into the gig. That he doesn't care.
It's like,
but I validated what I was seeing. And
Right.
she was dressed in red and white, chiefly. Like a red, white striped shirt and red pants and lots of red. Anyway. So
sounds
she's
like a hybrid
kind of doing this. She's lazing about. Excuse me?
Sounds like a hybrid of sorts.
Kind of. Well, let me dig into this a little bit more. So she's kind of lazing around looking for something to do, and she loses her little kid mind. Definitely a childlike reaction. She points at this vehicle. Now, in 2002, the new Beetle had just come out, so look, we're super aerodynamic and weird and fun. And she points out, she starts freaking out. She says, look at that. But she's not saying anything. And she looks back at someone. I watch her head snap back, and I follow her line of sight to a very tall woman. I make her 6'5", maybe 7.
Crazy.
And she's dressed in what I can only call Jedi robes, and she has a hood over to go with it. And she's standing there, and she's got these 2 dudes next to her that come up to her about her shoulder. And they're definitely men in black, but they're wearing different colored trench coats, like driving coats. One's blue, one's beige. But other than that, it's the black suit, the black sunglasses with a little cable in their ear. And you see one of them. I'm sorry, I missed a step. She keeps the kid freaking out, pointing, like she knows what it is. And the mom, without saying, I call it a mom because I saw a hint of a breast under the robes. Without saying a word, she had her arms folded thusly and reaches one hand out, and more like signs than anything. She says, "Stop, come here." Extra long fingers, just like her daughter. Come here now. And the kid stomps over. She is not having any of it, but she obeys. One of the men in black do this, and not even a minute later, a limo comes screaming, and I mean screaming around the corner. Stops, picks them up. They all pile in. They scream off again.
That's crazy.
Just prior to that event, the week before, I heard, I'm blanking on his name, who talked about the tall whites in his experience. Carl Carl White, maybe. Can't remember now.
You
But
got me.
on
Yeah.
Coast to Coast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because he described the exact same creatures I was seeing. Isn't that
That's
amazing? When we come
interesting.
back,
Mhm.
we're going to take a quick break and do a station ID. And when we come back, we'll get into Michelle's image that she saw, that she came up with. She found it. So let's do a quick station break and we'll have one quick word from our sponsors. So stand by, please. As I call this up, yep, I'm wasting time. It's a
That's
good
okay.
time.
There we go.
Here we go. Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 in the Gulf Coast. UPRN talkradio.com. Esoteric programming at its finest.
Symbol. The trident. Gifted to us by the priests of Troy Xenos centuries ago when one of the first monster hunting teams out of Corinth battled a contingent of Vrykolakas that had infested their temple. After the victory over the monsters, the head priest declared, "You are three lances acting as one, not unlike Poseidon's mighty trident of light." That would become our name, the Trident of Light, for the good we did and still do against the dark evils of this world.
Available at Amazon Books.
And that's it for now. There we go.
What was that? No.
What was that? I don't know. But well, let's get back to portals real quick, and I'm going to add to the stage an image
Okay.
that
That's the first
Michelle pulled
image.
up.
Okay, so then of
Okay.
course you see the official sign of Lucifer, which I have another one up here. But the 5 points, okay, of the Vatican portal opening ritual, which was on Christmas Eve. And I have to tell you, I thought I read something that was, I think CERN, was it CERN? Sort of kind of had
Mm.
some sort of a mishap or something on this. There was some kind of, somebody was posting pictures like flames and all kinds of stuff coming out of that area. So I don't know if they're even connected, but I kind of thought it was interesting. So when you take the coordinates of each portal that were opened, it creates the sigil of Lucifer. So the coordinates were St. Peter's Basilica, and they do have these coordinates.
Yeah.
The Roman prison Rabibia, if that makes sense, Rabibia.
Yeah, that was the questionable one, as I recall.
Well, he basically said it was to give inmates hope, which is why they used that one, which was interesting. The Basilica St. John Lateran, the Basilica St. Mary Major, and the Basilica of St. Paul. So when you bring them all together, as you can see, in the picture here, it creates this sigil at the bottom. So I don't know.
Well, it's an incomplete version of the sigil. I will point that out.
It is. It is
But
pretty close. So
I can see where it's pretty close, but
it is.
I can see where there would be concern. My
Mhm.
only, and this is a north to south viewing of the in the map as near as I
From
can tell.
Vatican City, yeah,
Um,
I guess so, yeah.
yeah. So
But
I would go ahead.
no, I said, but and there are portals to these places, but apparently there's all kinds of portals. So are we talking real portals? Are we talking
Right.
tunnels? What are we talking exactly? And what's coming through?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the big
Because
concern. What's
well,
coming through?
they definitely have it as an occult, it's an occult event is basically what people are essentially calling it. So it's sort of like, okay, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
that's
It's
different.
but people were asking, and that's it. That's pretty much the gist of it. And but when you're
Yeah.
looking at videos, there's videos of this thing all over the place. And I'll tell you, the Pope looks really concerned. At one point, one of his aides comes to him to try to, I don't know if he's trying to remove, his cape or help him with it. And the Pope gets very aggressive and pulls it back,
Hmm.
and it gets really stern. Oh, and there are people out there who think that, he's losing his faculties as well. So that could have something to do with it. But we live in different times. Leave that one right there. But
Yeah,
go look for
that
yourselves,
was
guys. There's lots out there.
that's something I would yeah, indeed. I would invite our audience and viewers and all listeners alike to definitely
Hmm.
check that out for themselves because everyone's going to have a different perspective on that.
Yes.
Um, it looks like um, Heidi had similar experiences with people in Jedi robes, as I called them,
Hmm.
about 10 years ago, which is fascinating. That's
There we
intriguing.
go. There we
And
go.
yeah, good times.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely something to it. I mean, there's people that show up all over the place. Like there's a belief that there are small. They look like probably what do you call those little dudes in Star Wars with the little cloaks that go around
Oh,
cleaning
yeah,
everything up? Yeah.
Utini, those guys, John
Those
Watts, John
guys,
Watts.
yes, yes. Well, there apparently are some that look like that with the little brown cloaks, but they're short and they're like little cleanup guys, and they have these really old-looking faces on them. That's
Hmm,
something as well. So, maybe there's just a taller
yeah,
version, maybe they're a hybrid version that you guys saw, maybe there's so many out there. It's really hard to say for sure, you know. Is this something we've seen
yeah.
before? Not. I mean, people out there are having all kinds of experiences. Our experiences continued for quite a while. The house, here's where it gets a bit strange. The house, we never used the upstairs. It was just a big house. You just didn't use it. And the tower upstairs, had very bright windows, and there was a street light that just, it would beam into the window and light up the whole floor upstairs. So it got to
Okay.
a point where the light no longer came in. It was kept the whole upstairs was sort of kind of it went dark. And over time, we could, kind of hear things in there and catch little glimpses of these little bald heads going down the hall. Because for a while, like my bedroom was up there, and you could just see things if you got up in the middle of the night for whatever reason to go to the washroom, whatever the case may be. Um, so it was strange because you're looking out the window, you see the light, it's right there by the church, and you couldn't see. There was no shadowing coming in from that light. You couldn't see. It was so black and upstairs, it was unreal. So over time, we kind of
Wow.
got used to that because everything was just downstairs after a while. I just stopped using the upstairs. And there's all kinds of different activity like that. But here's where it gets very strange. So it wasn't uncommon for things to come over the house. Wayne had stories of coming home from work. Sometimes he'd get back at about, 2, 3 in the morning, and he could see like there was something over the house. You could faintly see it, but yet you could see through it. It was crazy because we're talking a big
Mm,
house here, and it was like an old manor, Gothic revival. It was high, right? And
sure.
it was just bizarre. But where it got weird was after a while, because it wasn't a comment. I would talk about it on the shows. I don't talk about everything, but I do talk about quite a bit. All of a sudden, these two black Range Rovers or Land Rovers were parked across the street, and they were renting a house nearby, and two matching ones. And I'd be just kind of sitting there going, okay, I think I know what's going on here. It got very
Yeah.
strange. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, eventually sold the house. That was it. Sold the issues with it, I guess. But
That
you
was
know,
that was probably super smart.
well, it was a bit concerning. It was a bit concerning,
Yeah.
but I mean, obviously they were watching it. I was like, I'm pretty much an open book about it. It's just like whatever, just
Yeah,
ask.
yeah.
If you're looking to investigate it, you could probably go stay there now. But yeah, so just
Oh,
things
fun.
like that. Yeah. Yes, it was the manor house cat.
Mhm.
So, yeah. So, that's not the
Yeah.
first time,
Well,
but
let's that kind of segues into my next portion with you. Now, you became a paranormal investigator. You looked into this stuff.
mm,
I also want to maybe tie in your ability as a medium and or psychic, however you identify your abilities.
mhm.
Um, and talk to me a little bit about. I would assume your childhood experiences got you into it. How did you actually start
Mm.
investigating? Did you go with the group? Did you
Well,
form a group? What happened?
it definitely wasn't being an experiencer that way that got me into it, because I really wasn't fully aware of all of that. I didn't recognize a lot of what was going on until much later in life. In the last 5 years, I started going, wait a minute, this could have been this or this or this, and this happened. And I started recalling a lot more. But I did have a lot of paranormal
Hmm.
experiences. But I come from a family where it was not uncommon to have things going on, paranormally speaking, probably because we were all bloody experiencers. So, you know, things were happening. Because even on my father's side, like, he goes, oh, yeah, we'd see UFOs all the time. My grandparents owned an island up north, and it was very isolated. So it wasn't
Cool.
weird and uncommon to see things going on. So my father ended up a very gifted man, but very much did not want to talk about it. So he didn't have a lot of patience for
Mm.
it and had all kinds of experiences. And as I became an adult and got involved in the field, he goes, oh, I remember when this happened to me, this happened to me. You made me feel like this was a big ass family secret that should not be spoken about growing up. Meanwhile, made me feel like I'm this crazy child who didn't know what the hell was going on, and you had all these experiences. So I guess, you change with time as the topic becomes
Yeah.
more acceptable, then you feel more comfortable in communicating about it, but I mean, I could always see things as a child. It wasn't uncommon for me to see things. And my mom's family, I mean, we had a lot of mediums in the family, so I wasn't discouraged from it, because I think that's something we as parents, we apply our own fear. Some people are very fearful of things you can't see, or they apply their values and say, no, like my mother's came from a line of medium, says, don't talk about it. Neighbors will think we're crazy. We are. It doesn't matter. We got all kinds of things going on. It's just, but again, it was just the sign of the times. You just didn't talk about it. But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it wasn't discouraged with me. Like we'd go over to my grandparents' house for like Christmas or something, and like it was not uncommon to see deceased relatives coming in, and I would talk to my grandparents about it and say, oh, I saw this man. They didn't discourage me. They took out old family photos and they laid them out and say, and I would just say, who's this guy right here? you know but they had experiences like that. My grandfather's brother died. My grandfather was up at their island for a couple of months. It was like leave your wife with 6 kids at home by herself and go get peace and quiet out someplace, isolated for a couple months. But it wasn't uncommon again. And he would basically just say, he'd come home and my grandmother would say, I have news for you. He goes, oh, I know. So and so died. He came in and saw me before he left. It's like weird stuff.
Oh,
One of the old
that's
family
that's
farmhouses.
awesome.
But it happened all the time. Like they had this old family farmhouse, and I guess the great grandfather was having a fling, and the great grandmother knew about it from the story that I
Mhm.
got through the family. And when the mistress died, there were the night she died, my great grandmother was sitting in the parlor, and this one was up on the second floor, and there were little flames on the window ledge. And then she just turned around and she said, all right, I forgive you. Now just leave. And the flames disappeared. And then another time, a deceased family member went,
That's
and out
neat.
of the same freaking window was just a disembodied hand going like this. And it was wintertime, and there were no footprints in the snow 2 stories down. So this wasn't different
Yeah.
for us. This was all quite common growing up with these stories, you know. And as a child, it wasn't uncommon. Like we lived in a valley, you know, with numerous lakes and very, very small community, which was really fantastic. And you know, I remember one time, I think I spoke about this on one of the shows that I did. I never really talked about it before because the things just come to mind. And there was this young guy, you know, and he just like people go commit suicide, you know, off the beaten path somewhere. And I guess somewhere that wasn't in the time that we lived there because we'd never heard of anybody like that. And it was just a matter of, you know, this person's part of his head was just missing. And I was just, you know, it was, I know it was just different. So I didn't really like things like that. I didn't like hearing disembodied voices. So I just asked that ability go away. And I regret it now. You know, obviously as an adult, that I could never seem to, I get it back sometimes, but a lot of what things have been for me is telepathic. And I think you just tend to second guess a lot of that, especially with AI out there now. So it's like you second guess everything. But it's you know, but so there's a lot of that. And I think with me getting older, like the teen years got really crazy because again, I was projecting a lot, but I also had a presence there, which, you know, sort of showed itself to be more of a demonic in nature. But when I think back to it, there were so many similarities with ET stuff as well. It's hard for me now just to like they're blending together, and I'm trying to see if I can separate that. So it gets really convoluted that way. But you know, it wasn't uncommon. And then I had this crazy aunt that came over one time because she thought it'd be cool to use a Ouija board. And something followed her home that night.
Man, don't get me started on Ouija boards.
Oh my God, it was crazy, Tim. It was crazy. It was crazy. She said something followed me home that night, and it was in the back of the car with me. And so, you know, when I went to bed that night, you know, something was pushing down on my chest, and I'm sitting there going, "You're the one that took a stupid thing out." But a face imprinted right into the wood of this thing because it was wood. It wasn't just this laminate thing back then. And this is the same aunt who, when she was a younger woman, was living with her parents, basically asked to see the spirit of her board at the time. And my grandmother told me this story. I know it got weird. And I wouldn't have believed it if my grandmother wouldn't have told me the story. But she said one night she heard my aunt with a blood-curdling scream. And both my grandparents ran down the hall and they saw something exiting her room. And it just looked like a big hunk of flesh that just wandered out and just disappeared. And both my grandparents were witness to it. My grandmother told me the story. And then my mom reiterated it. She goes, "Yeah, I remember that night." You know, she goes, "Our rooms were upstairs, so we didn't see." She was the youngest, so her room was on the main level. But according to my aunt, what she had asked was to see the spirit because it was being very deceiving, you know, and some of the things it was saying. And it said, one night when you're alone, I'll give you the scare of your life, essentially. And maybe, you know, my grandparents, yeah, it was weird. My grandparents kind of looked at it as maybe the spirit just wanted to instill the fear of God into her to say, don't keep asking for these things, you know, because everything stopped after that. And then she comes to my house and does it. What's wrong with you? I'm like 14, very impressionable, full of psychokinesis, you know. So like, yeah, brilliant. So, yeah. So lots of stuff happened. And I went on to form, you know, I got involved in a group and ghost tours and things like that, you know, probably around 2004, you know, think, okay, I'm going to do this. I want to learn more about it. And it just really projected from there. I've done, you know, a couple of decades of television, which again is just sort of, you know, they show what what sells, right? It's not like what I'm necessarily like.
Yeah.
But if people
Right.
could take something away from it, then it's great. It helped a lot of people find me that needed me, for help and so on. And I'm glad for that part of it. So I've had a lot of experiences though through researching and investigations and so on, because they were never very well. I didn't really do lighthearted ones because there were a lot of people who were willing to do those. I did the ones that were a little bit darker because they were very time consuming.
Yeah.
So that's
Got
that.
it. If you had to pick one investigation, what was the one that maybe what was the one that that maybe knocked you on your butt? And then what was the one that gave you the happiest outcome?
Mm, that's really tough because I mean most of them were dark, but they were learning experiences. They were all learning experiences. I mean, I did one location where the thing would call the house, growl at me, call me every name in the book, and blah 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 blah. And I've got all these recorded. I'm just like, holy crud.
Wow.
The funniest story I think attributed to one of that was at the time, my former husband at the time picks up the phone, which was a landline, which was quite interesting, and all I could hear was this growling and stuff going on the other end of the line. And I'm just trying to wipe my hands. I was peeling potatoes. It was right at dinner time. I'm going, just talk to it for a minute. I'll be right there. He's like, all he said was, it's for you. When he heard the growl, he goes, it's for you. Just talk for 1 minute. And he's like, no. So there were things like that. The most memorable one that handed me my own rear end, if that's going down that
Yeah.
one was a very humbling experience because my daughter lost her vision with that. Something followed back,
Oh
and
gosh.
yeah, for exactly 1 month. And I finally, I just tapped in. It was we were not supposed to go back. The family we were involved with did not want to pursue further. They really got frightened with it. So we knew we weren't going back. And I just said, okay, whatever, you win. But it wasn't a win because we weren't going back. But because I just said, like, I'm like, what is it like you want? And it just said, stay away. It's like, yeah, all right. That's not a hard one because we weren't invited back. So
Right.
I was like, okay. And literally by the next day, she said I could see, but her sight was never the same. And we sent her for psychologists, psychiatrists. We sent her to eye specialists. We did everything. Had MRIs done. She had photos of the inside of her eyes taken. I mean, we did everything. And it took my family doctor to say, what have you worked on lately that you think something may be
Mm.
out of the norm? For a family doctor, that was pretty cool in a way.
Yeah.
I never would have expected it because I went into that thing just thinking, okay, I've got this. But I didn't have it
Right.
because it was humbling in a way because it made me realize that I have people who are close to me that can be affected. I may not be affected, but it
Right.
doesn't mean that these things don't have a long reach,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
There's something we do on my team that my psychic and paranormal partner, JJ Rose, does, and she calls it bubbling.
mhm,
It's kind of like spiritual protection shields if you're a Star Trek fan.
mhm,
Uh, and we do it before every investigation, so something like
mhm,
that doesn't happen, and we don't take
mhm,
anything with us.
mhm,
And I was skeptical at first. I just entertained her, to be honest, initially,
mhm,
but we got thrown to the deep end of a former satanic. Um, she was a victim, really. She
mhm.
didn't realize she was a part of a cult until they tried to sacrifice her.
Ooh,
And that was one of the darkest cases I'd ever been involved with. And thankfully, JJ was there to protect me and the other investigator, Henry.
mhm,
Um, and our clients as well, because they were there. I mean, we're not a TV show with thousands of dollars back in our plate. We
Yes.
can't send our clients to a hotel for the night.
Yes.
So, more often than not, the client's going to be there with you during the investigation.
Mm.
And it was thanks to this protection that she later taught us how to do ourselves, to empower ourselves a little bit more, so she doesn't tap her abilities too much.
I think a lot of it is intention and
it
mindset.
works.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely, it is.
Mhm.
And, but it's still, I think, beneficial more than not. I mean, I'd rather it's that thing of carrying that extra piece of equipment with you that you probably won't use, but you'd rather have it and not need
Just
it than
in
need it and
case.
not have it. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where I come from on it.
Yeah. No, I think it is all about intention. I think when people are doing clearings with sage, they say, well, it doesn't work. And I'm just like, well, it's the power behind the words that you're using, and it's a strong intention behind the act of the cleansing itself. And you have to keep at it. It's not like waving a magic wand. And there are sometimes things that, you have to deal if you're dealing, for example, with a family with a certain religious background. You can't go in, like, if I'm dealing with a Buddhist, I'm not going to go in there with a whole Catholic viewpoint, like there's different viewpoints.
Yes.
You have to work with the faith and the belief system of the family that you're working with. And I think it's very important to empower those people. I've spent more time educating people than just investigating. I used to have like a year and a half waiting list to be someplace in person. So I'd have to work with people over the phone or online and just say, do this, do this. And by the time, I had a couple of cases where I said, okay, I can come in now, And they're like, no, you really taught us a lot. We're okay. I'm like, perfect. So that's the objective, is empower them enough where they can take control of their own space. And I never went in there with this attitude of, oh, you're lucky I'm here. No, nothing like that. It was always with the attitude of, thank you for entrusting yourself with your most precious thing, which is your family. Thank you for entrusting yourself to me. Let me take the weight for a while and just you're okay, and we would just work very closely together. Sometimes I get calls like middle of the night. The phone was always on for people who were just having a problem, and I didn't go stir stuff up when I investigate. Like, it got to a point where I stopped doing the actual investigations because the things that they were dealing with, they didn't want to communicate. They don't care what it is. It's tormenting their family. They're not sleeping. They're having issues. I got to a point where you become seasoned enough to just know by what people tell you pretty much what you're dealing with, and you just work based on that, and you just try to move forward from that point. It's not up to me to go in there, stir things up, have a communication, leave the family behind. Things amp up because, well, you wanted to talk to me half an hour ago. It's just, and that's just same applies with just nasty ghosts, like human spirits. Like, there's some bad person in life, bad spirit. Like, that's it.
Yep. There was some interesting stuff that cropped up in the chat. That kind of relates, I think, a little bit to what you were talking about. Love 10 has this recurring experience, from what I'm reading, where she sees a black haze and it lasts for 5 seconds, and it seems a little malevolent, and but at the same time, it wasn't terribly harmful, according to what she was saying. But I found that very interesting, kind of relating to what you were saying about intent and what you could put out there versus what you take in.
It's important because
So
we can track things too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You were also speaking about how a given energy, a religion, for example, will create kind of a, for lack of a better term, a specific field within the house. Hey, Mort. Mort just came on. And I'll give you an example. There was a a client came to us. We need help. We have a shadow creature, and there's some poltergeist activity. And like 2 minutes before I showed up, there was this glass that flew across the room and shattered against the wall. And they left it alone for me to see. And I investigated, and it didn't seem, short of someone actually physically staging the whole thing and just wasting a glass. It could have been paranormal. It could have been psychokinetic activity.
Sure.
Psychokinetic activity. I cannot talk.
Psychokinetic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. And but they were, they walked me through everything. They told me what the shadow entity was, and I talk about this on my on the show a lot, where as an investigator or even a medium, you walk into a given space, you kind of run into that wall of something's off, something really dark. Definitely off. And that's when I went to the garage where they say this shadow thing comes from. That made sense. It's like, oh yeah, there's something there, you get the oogie kind of horrible feeling.
Yeah.
And
right.
When I said, okay, let me talk to my partners and we'll come back, and he says, well, I don't need you to investigate. I just want you to get rid of the thing. I said, at the time I didn't have JJ who could do that. And I said, I can't do that. I don't have that ability. Have you thought about calling? I'm noticing the crosses and the pictures of Jesus all over the house. I'm saying, have you called a priest about this? Yeah, we called the priest, and darn it, it didn't work. It got worse, if anything. I need you to get rid of this thing. I said, I don't have that ability. I'm sorry. I can reach out and maybe find someone who can. But he was adamant, but he was ticked that I couldn't do anything about it, but I couldn't do anything about it.
Not everybody, not everybody can do things about it. Sometimes here's how I look at things. I believe, through just research and experiences with different families, that these malevolent things feed off of our energy, which includes fear. So they'll make you more fearful. This is why they have create a lot of infighting within the home, because it creates an energy they can feed from. They get stronger from it. If you have addictions or mental health, they prey on that. They make it worse. How do you beat that? Is, again, you change the energy and the vibration in the space. You starve it, essentially. If everything is all feeling really good and it's all positive energy, and the act of cleansing is taking control. You're empowering yourself. You're taking control over your space. That's the intention. You're pushing this out. Say what you mean what you say, follow through, don't challenge, but be firm, and play that music, watch the funny movies, open the windows, let the house breathe, just uplift yourself. That works. I'm living proof of that. There were no paranormal investigators that I was aware of, especially in my space when I was growing up and I had this. I had to sit there and go in, and the closest I could get from a public library was a book on white witchcraft that taught me how to ground and how to cleanse my space. That's how I did it, and my intention. I stuck to it, and I just kept doing it, and I took control. That's how I did it. So I practice what I preach, right? I taught myself, and
I did the exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. See,
I picked up it was a book on it was called The Witch Book. And my brother gave it to me because I told him I'm thinking about doing this investigation thing. And it's called The Witch Book, and it's everything. It's dark magic, it's white magic, it's everything. And that's important to know, the entire spectrum, or as much of it as can be fit into a book anyway.
Balance.
And it was one perspective, but at the same time, I had my Catholic background. That helped some. I had my scientific background from NASA, which also helped a great deal, learning about all that stuff. My buddy and partner in the paranormal thing, Henry, he was an avid scientist and computer science and physical sciences. So that helped. But all these things came together to really give me a good background. Plus, I was a private detective for like 3 or 4 years earlier in my youth. So I had that aspect as well. I know how to ask questions, interview people, and all that fun stuff. I said
Yeah.
it, yeah. So there was I don't know where I was going with that.
I'd like to address the whole frequency thing, though. Binaural beats. Binaural beats, you can work with different frequencies that do different things, and that alters the energy, not only yours, because binaural beats frequencies can actually heal you physically. There's a big belief that it helps our vibration, and it definitely helps within your space by changing that frequency again to something more uplifting. I've used it a lot of times working with people, and you know where else people get caught and you don't think you'll get caught is grieving. Grieving, we put ourselves in a we don't put ourselves there. I mean, grieving, we mourn loss. We're physical beings. Well, technically we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we exist in a physical plane. We need that physical interaction. When we lose someone, we need the physical. We need them to be there. So sometimes just by wanting so desperately to have a sign, because I've worked with families, I'm not just speculating, because I've worked with families. This is exactly what what happened to them. They want so desperately to get a sign from a loved one that they start asking for it. And there are things out there, there are beings out there that prey on that. And I remember getting a call from someone saying, I got a recording on my answer machine. I need to know, what this is. So I'm like, okay. Luckily, she was not far from me, so I could squeeze her in. I went in. And this thing was growling and called her, the F and C word. And she goes, I need to know if that's my husband. I said, I don't know. Did he like you? Like, this is pretty harsh. So, and I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm just like, if I got a message like that, I would definitely know that my husband wouldn't say something like that to me. So, but what I found out was that she had been trying to do voice recordings, and something had come in and was mimicking, her loved one, and messages started coming. Things got really, really bad. So I think when you're going through this, and I hate to take the experience away from anyone, because you don't want to second guess your experiences. I lost both my parents in 15 months, and I'm a seasoned investigator, and even the lights would flicker. My mother always said, I'll flicker your lights. I'm like, all right, sure. But in my mind, I'm like, do you trust it? Do you trust it?
Yeah,
But
right.
I know. So then she's one night, what did it for me was the bathroom light. And I'm just like, okay, I just kind of need a moment. This is very awkward for me. And it all stopped. So I'm like, okay, that would be my mother. She'd be respectful. But it's right. So it's just being cautious, being careful, but don't take away from that experience. But that morning, that deep sadness and the feeling of loss can sometimes bring things in that will feed from that and keep you in that sense of loss. So that's just something I like to address, because we're in that time of year too, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. My Christmas is a little sad, usually, just a little bit every year, because I lost my grandfather around this time, and I lost one of my best friends around this time.
No, sorry, that's really
So
hard.
it's
Yeah. There's no
that's a
time
tough,
limit on grieving.
it's been a few years.
Yeah. No
Sorry.
time limit on grieving ever. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
So that's
It's
it.
true.
So
Especially as you get older.
yeah. No, it's true. It's true. But I mean, I think with that, it's why it's so important to try to stay as uplifted as possible. And sometimes, you may not feel like it. Sometimes you may wake up, you may have anxiety, you may feel that depression, but it's so important to just try to bring yourself up. And I know it's easier said than done. I know many people who suffer from it. And it's just, that's where I'll try to come in and just be that uplifting if I can, and just say, hey, you see somebody on the street, smile. It costs you nothing. Just smile. Just how are you? Interact. It sometimes makes all the difference in that person's world for that one moment. Is just all it takes. Having a bad day. Like I'm really bad for the road rage. Like if somebody had a camera on me, we could do a show on my hostilities behind the wheel, but I'm not stupid behind the wheel. I'm just one of those, So I realized at that point that sometimes I have to play, I can't play all my heavy metal sometimes, which I love. It pumps you up. It makes you go, it really gives it to you too, right? Sometimes I will actually listen to classical, or I'll actually listen to Gregorian chantings and just things like that calm me down.
Oh,
I know. Bet you wouldn't have thought about that.
it works.
No,
No, it works. You're absolutely correct about all of that.
Yeah.
There was a who was it? I can't remember who it was now, but they said if you want to start your day right, you got to listen to. Let's see if I can remember the song. Mozart's Fifth Symphony, third movement, and like the first 3 minutes of that song, you'll be good all day.
Right. There you go.
Don't quote me on that piece of music too. That's just that's kind of what I'm putting together in my head, though.
I'm a lover of music, and it is a language in its own right, and it is full of frequencies. And we always have music going on. We're babysitting like a parrot right now, a family member's parrot. So birds constantly got music going on, having conversations with herself. But there's, even when it was just like the dogs, we always had music on for them. It's just it's just the vibration that's always going on in the house, which is a good vibe. Not that things don't try to come in. Happens.
Yeah, I mean, attempts will be made, but usually you can fend it off pretty easily if you got a good.
Never a problem. I put things in place. Something comes in, or someone comes in that's not supposed to.
Right.
It's gonna boomerang back out there. So
that's good. That's good. Glad to hear
that. As long as you're not on the receiving end, I guess. So
yeah. Well, yeah. That's what I was sorry. I was trying to say that. Whoops. Let's see. I hit the wrong button on my computer. Bear with me just a second. Nope. I'm trying to remember okay. When we talk about all this stuff, all this high strangeness, for lack of a better term, and I've never been a huge fan of that term, but
I know, but it fits, doesn't it?
It does, unfortunately. Bigelow tipped me off a long time ago, but that's a separate thing.
I know. Highly strange. It's up there.
Yeah, right. But high strangeness does work. But it's fascinating how I even came into this field, because I wanted to just investigate people initially and figure what made people tick and all that fun stuff. When I was doing private investigation, and so I became a spiritual PI.
Right.
With Paranormal Insight, and that was just the transformation from, for lack of a better term, normal to this paranormal world of ours, this side of things was, yeah, totally. That's what Kat said.
How it starts. Yeah.
Was nothing short of more or less a switch flipped. I went into this, to be honest, because of my early childhood experiences with uh,
Mm.
I wouldn't say malicious ghost, but a ghost that appeared to me as a full-bodied apparition. I've talked about this on my show before, but uh,
Mm.
uh, she was, I think she was a stewardess, just because of the way she was dressed. She had this green and blue vest, white shirt underneath that,
Mm.
a green and blue skirt, and she had
Mm.
this kind of 60s bob haircut thing going. I don't
Right.
remember a hat. But this spirit walks into my room. First
Mm.
off, the living room light just suddenly flicks on. And I was a young kid. I was like 3 or 4, and you could chalk
Mhm.
this up to imagination, but I have proof. Um,
Right.
and she the light flips on, and this wakes me up, and there's this woman standing in my door, and she got her hands on her hips, and she's doing this to me, bah, 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 and she's yelling at me, but there's no sound
Mm.
at
Yeah.
all. And
Right.
and then she kind of encroaches on in the room, and I close my eyes, I cover my eyes, and I close them super tight, and I lay still, and then I open my eyes
Mm.
again, daringly, and
It's that thing we
I'm
were
prone
talking about.
around you.
Yeah, you gotta look.
Right. And I'm lying prone, of course, and she has bent over to meet my eyes. And she stares at me like this, says something else, and I scream, and I run through her. I get up and I run through this image, this spirit, whatever it is you want to call her. And it
Mhm.
was so cold. I'll never forget that sensation of cold. And
Mm.
I run to my parents' room, and I wake them up, and I said, "There's a lady, there's a lady, there's a lady. I don't know who she is." And my mom was the one who got up and calmed me down and gave me some hot milk and sent me back to bed. And she was keen, even bleary eyed as she was, getting woken up like that. She says, "Tim, how did you turn this light on?" Because back in the 70s, at least in the U.S. building code, the lights were really high on the wall, and I wasn't tall enough to reach them.
Right, right.
So not to date myself, but que sera.
I get that.
There's no way I could have reached those lights.
Yeah.
My mom and dad had to switch the lights on and off. So
Oh,
we turned the
boy.
light on.
But that's how it
And I
starts. I
never
think
saw her again, but
that's enough, though. Sometimes it just takes that one experience to bye, cat. I think it takes that one
hi, Kat,
experience
thanks for showing up.
to set you on that journey. For me, it was very much a part of my life, so a lifestyle thing, I guess, and it remained as such, because my kids could all see. I shut off everything. I'm like, I don't want
Oh,
to
wow.
attract any of this for kids. I had kids, and unbeknownst to me, they're all seeing, and they got all these experiences. I'm like, damn it! Now I've got to make sure I'm on it because I need to be aware of what they're experiencing if they run into any trouble. We had a,
Yeah.
a ghost in the basement that wandered in because of my daughter, who was high energy, and people would see him. This is the infancy of webcams. They would see him when she was talking to a friend. She'd say, "Who's that?" And she would go, "That's just Bill." So here I'm trying to
Mm.
delicately explain to her that there's a spirit in the house. She goes, "Oh, that's just Bill." She goes, "The guy with the trucker cap and the plaid shirt." I'm like, "Yeah, that guy." And she said, "Oh," she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Yeah, he's around." Turns out he was some 18-year-old kid that hung himself in the area like 50 years before. And one time
Oh,
she said
wow.
to me, that she was walking down the stairs and she had her laundry in her hands because she was probably about 15, and she swept the cat out of her way with her foot. She goes, "I was gentle. I didn't want to hurt her, but I didn't want to trip over her because that really would have hurt her." And he gave her a hip check. Laundry goes flying, everything. And I'm just like, okay, well, this is a problem. And what did it for me was she said she rolled over one night because she wanted the basement room, right? Because she had the whole family room too.
Yeah.
And she said she woke up and she felt him there, saw him there. And I'm like, what did you do? She goes, I stayed on my own side of the bed. I'm like, okay, right, this is a problem. But it's my child, right? I stayed on my own side of the bed.
Boundaries have to be drawn.
Oh, I know, right? So that was it. And I had to ixnay him probably a couple times from the house. But you know what?
Oh,
Like,
wow.
all in all, it's been an interesting journey. Wherever I travel in the world, I always try to stay at haunted places, especially very old haunted places. And
Yeah.
you know, I've been fortunate enough to be an extensive world traveler, and being able to go to the places that a lot of people wish it could do. And one of them being the haunted forests of Romania, which is a whole other show. And I know we're short on time, but
Oh,
I could tell you it
yeah.
lived up to its name and some. So it's a very fascinating place. But there are places, you know, spent other places in Romania, places, you know, France, Egypt. I've had experiences pretty much everywhere. And you don't go necessarily looking for it. I didn't always travel just looking for
Right.
experiences, but they find you. I think you just, the way it is, you're just meant to. If you're meant to, you're meant to.
Yeah. That's true. That's very
Right?
true.
Yeah. So
That's
I've
terribly
been
true.
fortunate.
Yeah, you know, you have. They really have. I mean, I have too in my own respect. Most of my experiences have been in my area,
Yeah.
in California,
Yes.
and it's been enough. I mean, I've literally experienced pretty much everything here, with the exception of, well, that's not true either. I've experienced everything from a Bigfoot related thing to
That's cool.
UFOs to
Yeah.
and uh, to hauntings. Naturally, as a paranormal investigator, I mean, I don't
Mhm.
have this shirt for nothing.
Yeah.
I have definitely had a lot of experience right here in my hometown. That kind of speaks to the area a little bit too, because it's a former
Mhm.
um, mining and kind of gold rush hit, and everyone just flew out here. But
Yeah, that's cool though. It's
I'm not
cool.
impressed.
You'll find them in the
It is
least,
cool. I've been very fortunate.
yeah, when you least expect it. You'll find experiences anywhere and everywhere. There's a whole other world out there that we share space with. And it's a wondrous world.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of energy spots. There's a lot of portals, you know, vortexes. There's people themselves
sure.
who are portals. I mean, we can so easily bring things in and out through our own energy. You can create portals all the time. You can project things. It's fascinating. And I think once you realize that and you pay attention, the key is paying attention. The example I always use is, if you leave a glass on the table, you go to work, you come back. If the glass is moved, will you look at it and say, oh, the glass is moved? Or will you say, oh, yeah, I forgot to put that away? I mean, we're researchers. We would know. We should know. I'm always
Yeah,
aware of my surroundings. I pride myself on it. But I would come home, because I've
yeah.
done it, and say, oh, yeah, I left that there, without realizing, no, wait a minute, this isn't where I left it. So we have to be
Right.
aware, right? So,
We definitely have, especially when you go as an investigator, when you go in to help someone at someone else's house, you've got to
mhm.
be aware of everything. I mean, I don't know if you did it on when you were doing it, but you do
Yeah.
the photos
Yeah,
to go in, and you get your
you do.
baseline,
Yes, you have to.
and just to see if anything moves. And
Mhm.
we actually caught one thing that shifted like across the room in one of the baseline checks, because we do
So there you
two of them.
go. Yeah. See,
It's
right
like,
there.
oh, already we got something. Get the
That's
camera
what's
set up real
important.
quick.
Being thorough.
That is
That's
important.
being thorough. Yes.
Yes. And it wasn't it was kind of subtle, but I mean, you do the image check and you see if
Mhm.
things move or not. It's
You're onto
fascinating when that
something.
happens. You know you're off to the races.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Mort had an interesting question that I think maybe requires a little bit of acknowledgement, and I can't
Mhm.
get him up because I had another window open. And that
Okay.
question is, he wants suggestions to raise one's vibration to be more open to spirits, with which I would say, I like your initiative, but you don't want to be too open to spirits.
Yeah.
So you got to really
Yeah.
put your attention out there. But I think Michelle probably has more to say on that than I do.
I would think just be aware of your own energy, raising your vibrations. Again, that's the easy part. Is just keeping everything positive in your space. And it's just you can do regular
Yeah.
cleansing. Some people like to sage their place all the time. Again, intention, your mindset is important. Playing music, laughing a lot, dancing, watching funny movies. Anything positive is going to give you a positive vibration because things that come in create chaos and upset because they need to feed off of that. That's what makes them stronger. So you want to be more open to spirits. I think you just have to be aware. Meditation really helps, but before you get into meditation, it's good to learn how to ground your energy. If you're in a place where
Yes.
you can walk barefoot outside year round, then you can do earthing. When I say hug a tree, I mean it. It's not cliche. It's really hug a tree because they're sentient. They communicate with one another through their root system, but they will
Yeah.
willingly share their energy with you. Do it. It will ground you. And there's different grounding techniques using trees per se, and mental imaging and working with different again, vibrations, frequencies, but also like mirroring type of exercises that you can do to protect yourself. Then you can go open yourself up during meditation because that's pretty much what we do when we meditate. We open ourselves up and we are willingly, traveling or connecting and making those connections. So it's important to be protected as well.
Heidi mirrored JJ's advice. Bubble up.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely got there's I forget what that's called. You said earthing, but it's not earthing.
Okay.
It's something else. When when you touch tree, some people get that. What's that called? When you touch something in a psychometry?
Psychometry. Yes.
Psychometry.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you touch a tree,
Yes.
suddenly you can check
Pick up
into like
energy.
everything around you. That's
Yes.
I've actually had that experience. It's really fascinating.
It
And
is
you do
because
have
they're
to be like,
energetic beings,
yeah,
trees. We don't look at
yeah.
trees and flowers as having essences, but they really do. Scientists have even done
It's true.
experiments with
Yeah, they're
plants.
all,
Like
you know,
you cut into a tree or take a branch off of a plant. Like they've been known to scream.
yeah,
Research
they've
that.
actually recorded it in science in different
Yes,
labs and stuff.
I know. It's
Horrible.
incredible. So it's a fascinating world, and life is abundant, and it's everywhere where you least expect it.
Yeah,
So,
quite interesting. Let's briefly touch on, because we only have a few minutes left.
yes.
Um, the how do I put this? Well, okay, you know what? That idea just kind of took a poop, so I'm gonna I'm gonna go to the chat real quick. A lot of folks are talking about a lot of folks on the chat are talking about the various frequencies. Do you ascribe to any given frequencies when you or do you just put on that cool song that you like and go for it?
No, I do listen to binaural beats as well, and I just go with the one I resonate with at that time. So I look at what's going on in my life, but research your frequencies, look at them, and see what the different frequencies do. But I'll put something on, and I'll resonate with that tone, and then that's the tone that I'll use, because maybe my essence is feeling a bit different than my physical. So you find something that you can connect with on both levels. So I just listen to them, and I see what feels good to me in that moment. You can get those on YouTube, guys. Like they're free to get. Just go and just lay on the couch or on the bed for a moment, and or play it while you're doing stuff, and just keep it going in the background. Sometimes you could just type in what you want. There's even stuff for grieving. So type it
Yeah,
in,
that's
see what
true.
comes up.
Everybody poo-poos the internet these days, but you know what? It does have some functionality.
For sure, for sure.
So we are coming down to our last 30 seconds. I'm going to say that's the end of our show. I'm going to run my end credits here in a little bit. And
Yes.
Michelle, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. And I'm glad because now I've got a few hours in between the Outer Realm tonight, guys. Check it out. Tim Clements from Haunts of Mackinac Island.
Go watch it.
Yeah. Check it out.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I'm tuning into that one.
That'll be good. I know. It'll be fun. It'll be fun.
It's good stuff. I don't have time to run my end credits. So with that, I'll say goodbye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. And that is the end of the show. Good night.
Good night, everyone. See you tonight.
Whatever.